Anyway, last thing, not least, just want to mention that China, okay? China, for the longest time, has been trying to lower their kids' population count because they're literally the largest population in the world, right? So on Monday, China said it would allow married couples to have 3 children, ending the 2-child policy that has failed to raise the country's declining birth rates and avert demographic crisis. And what do they mean by demographic crisis? This means that, and this is, I believe the UN said, and also demographic scientists, demographers, I believe that's what you call them, they've mentioned that by the mid-21st century, the amount of age-ready men to marry and the amount of age-ready women to marry, the disparity will be 1 million people, meaning there will be 1 million more men who are ready to marry and 1 million less girls in China.
This is just in China. Okay.
Ready to marry. Right, yeah, just in China. Because China, for the longest time, when they had the 2-child policy, they even had a 1-child policy. You know, their culture really is more about the male taking down the last name, you know, prioritizing males, and really they would have periods of time. I mean, I know someone, you know, the Christies, they're my really good friends of mine. We call it one of our each other cousins and things like that. She's like my aunt. They adopted a Chinese girl about, I don't know, 6, 7, maybe probably 8 years ago, and who was found in a dumpster. And it, you know, the amount of you know, because at the same time the Chinese government was very much opposed to you know, the birth rate, because it was so high. They would need to lower their population, resources were becoming scarce. But ever since they did do the 2-child policy, before it was like a 1-child policy in the 80s, it really, you know, people started emphasizing and prioritizing male births rather than female births. And so now in the middle of the 21st century, there's an expectation that there will be a disparity of 1 million more men than women. And China's doing a lot of programs right now to bring women in to the country. But you know, this has a lot to do. Population growth and birth rates and death rates have a big correlation with the environment and also the economic ability of a country. So a country that's developing has a greater chance of prosperity and economic growth when the population growth is limited and deterred. But when you're dealing with developing countries, you have a high fertility rate amongst women, which is called total fertility rate amongst the lifespan of a woman. And you also have high mortality rates amongst children, which is just a vicious cycle of women want to have more children, the deaths are higher, but that has a lot to do with the healthcare systems, the political systems, also the education of women. So around the world, you know, we don't know this really much in the United States, but around the world, the socioeconomic standpoint of a woman is much lower than a male's. And that basically just makes a woman go to not necessarily want to get educated or get pregnant very young, and ultimately just not seek any form of growth other than just tending for children. And then what that happens is that you create more people in a population, especially in a developing population where resources are scarce. And also more people are driving cars, working in manufacturing facilities that are inefficient, and it just creates pollution. So if you look at countries like India and China, there's dust domes and pollution and smog all over their urban cities. And you're seeing a lot of urbanization from rural areas, farmers and things like that, of young people move to urban areas in developing countries, much more than developed countries like the United States, but still using these very much non-renewable resources because a lack of education, the cost, we're not even up to scale with renewable resources. I mean, we're still developing that.
What I think is interesting is that China has a 1.4 billion human population.
Yeah.
And now they're allowing...
Wait, 1.4 billion?
Yeah.
We're at 400 million in the US?
400... We're at 328 million.
328, it's probably 340, but yeah.
And there is about 8 billion humans in the world. So they have a good, good fraction of humans. And I think introducing, a third child or allowing that, raising that restriction is good. I think it'd also be good for, the company Tencent, publicly traded, who owns WeChat. Why? Because it means more people are going to use WeChat, which is highly run by the Chinese Communist Party government. And WeChat is very profitable, whether it's through their red envelopes where, family members send cash to each other, or whether it's through just regular peer-to-peer payments. So I think, Tencent might be a good company long-term to throw your money at.
But Tencent's Chinese.
But Tencent is Chinese, so...
But ARK Invest is investing in them a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that makes sense.
ARK Invest is in Tencent. But hey, maybe Tencent is one of the exceptions. They're like a venture capital firm. But nonetheless, China and other developing nations would do better if they slowed population growth, which is what we consider R. What R is birth rate minus death rate of a population. And then you can also add the immigration and emigration, but let's just say birth rate and death rate. Now, in a place like Japan, you have a very high population of older people and a very low population of younger people. And that creates a problem because older people require more benefits. They can't work as efficiently. And the younger generation has to basically pay more in taxes to fund the benefits, like say whatever Social Security is in China, or I'm sorry, Japan. And then you're basically at a stagnation. So you kind of want to have a balance of like zero birth rate equaling death rates. Ideally, at least right now in this point, but there's an expectation that within the next 100 years, we're going to start slowing down that 7.9 billion. And at least in the next 100 years, it's going to be like an S curve. Right now, we're in exponential growth because of food supply, agricultural developments, medicine developments, etc. But eventually we will be able to consolidate, like you said, for like what Bitcoin should be doing.
And then if we live forever, there's opportunity there. So.
Well, I'm Peter.
And I'm Elihu.
And thank you for listening to Pineapple Chunks. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you all. And don't forget to like the podcast, leave a comment. It helps a lot for the hard to reach guests on Apple Podcasts. Like the video if you've stayed here this long. We're going to clip this, but what's going to the moon?
What's going to the moon?
Yeah.
I'm still hard on Ape Swap.
Ape Swap, banana coin.